Hey folks, me again, in the same place, we're having the same things, it's the same day, but as you can tell, a little later on. It's not that I'm drinking this in the morning, otherwise I'll be a proper old geek. So, anyway, we finally reached it, the top 10 um, books by James Herbert. I completely forgot who I was talking about then. Top 10 books by James Herbert, and yeah, it's bizarre that we've reached the top 10 because it doesn't feel like it, but here we are nonetheless. So, at number 10 on my list, I have decided to put his I think it was 81 book, The Jonah, at number 10. I really like this book, hence the reason it's at number 10 in my top 10 favourite books by James Herbert. And it's a book idea that James repeated. I've mentioned before, I've tried to keep spoilers to a minimum, but there's no escaping it. He repeated this idea twice throughout his career, once with Moon and once with Nobody True. And if you've read those books and who ultimately the killer is and part of the twist, you'll sort of understand why I feel that they are very strongly connected to the Jonah. However, the Jonah's where he did it the best. It's a story of a guy, and I'll try and keep things to a minimum in spoilers rather. I've had more than one of these, you can tell. Who he notices throughout his life that enemies of his start getting bumped off, and somebody or something is responsible for it, and he's trying to figure out who it is, because this thing, any contact he has with pretty much anyone, results in a horrific death of that individual, which means that he also can't form a decent relationship with somebody because of fear of them being bumped up. And then he meets somebody he falls in love with and gets very understandably concerned with their health. There's a little bit of what he carried on in Sepulchre, never be able to pronounce it properly, with that sort of counter-terrorism thing. And I've mentioned before that it's something that James Herbert seemed to want to move into, like a crime era, but never quite could do it. He did wildcards like Fluke, but he never quite could go into the crime genre, whereas people like Sean Hudson, who openly followed and loved James Herbert's work, would quite easily change their style from splatterpunk or horrific chillers into horror-filled crime books that were just as visceral, as enjoyable as their main body of work. And it's a shame that James never really managed to get into that, because I think he would have done really well. Like I say, Sepulchre. Somebody please educate me on how it's spelt, because it just bugs me. He wrote with that book a style that I think he could have really gone somewhere with. And The Jonah was the first one he did of that style, and it definitely worked. It's a short novel. Despite the fact that this is an 80s book, it feels like one of his 70s books in that it's very pulpy, it's very fast-paced, it doesn't waste too many words, and although it's got that sort of quintessential British charm to it and language and slang, I just happen to think it's a really good book. I've read this one that many times. I've read it over and over and over. And in my next review, or rather ranking, when I do number 9, I'm going to just go through something that I've mentioned a few times already that I haven't shown yet. What I mean is the quality of how the books are presented, paperbacks in general. I had a bit of a rant about it in terms of how I feel paperback horrors are these days, and have been for a while now. If you looked at the Richard Lehman books that I showcased, Hodder and Stoughton's headline feature press, who published them, went the extra mile with those covers and really did a great job. The Cemetery Dance Bentley Little books, which I'll talk about in due course as well, had a similar trim in that the artwork was great. And some of Herbert's early, so I must spell this then, some of Herbert's early books, his very early ones, published in the 70s and 80s, had wonderful covers, but then they everything just sort of became really generic. And I've mentioned before that they've tried to change horror novels now to be the same sort of dimensions as great works of literature, like Shakespeare and Wordsworth, just so it fits on the shelves and looks like them. But it's not what horror was all about, is it? And just a bit of a rant. I'll have a bit of moan next video about how books look. It just bugs me. But I want to end this on a good note, because that's got nothing to do with this book. This is a really good horror with a sort of espionage, chiller, crime underbelly, really. But yeah, I've put it at number 10. I think it's his 10th best book, and I think it's a genuinely really good one. And if you are a fan of James Herbert, this is one I absolutely recommend you read. So, The Jonah at number 10.